welcome to the N-Central and Halo PSA Integration Bootcamp with myself. My name is Jason Murphy. I know this was advertised as a Halo PSA Integration Bootcamp, so I know on this morning's webinar, I had at least a few N-Site partners who were asking me, well, should I stick around, or when will you be doing an N-Site Halo PSA integration? The good news is much of the integration is the same. I'm going to use N-Central to do the integration, but if you want to follow along and stick around, it's very similar. Okay, so first things first, let's go through a little legal disclaimer, like I always do. This content may contain forward-looking statements regarding future product plans and development efforts, so on and so forth. What that basically means is I don't get to make the decisions around when things come out. Or when things are released. Product plans and priorities do change. So if I talk about something in terms of a roadmap, and I probably will, you cannot take that as a promise to deliver, only because I'm not the executive vice president of our product team who gets to make that call. His name is Mike Adler. Okay, so who am I? My name is Jason Murphy. I'm one of the head nerds here at Enable. I worked at Enable previously for about 5 years, and then I left them to go work for a really big MSP here in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, where I live. I was the technology and security leader there, and I then left them and became the director of managed services for a smaller MSP. All in all, I've been focused on N-Central, IT service management, or PSA, for the better part of at least the last 10 years. I've been in the outsourced IT space, I would say, for the last 20 plus years. Here's the checklist for today. Okay, in order to follow this course, I recommend that you have the following: N-Central, ideally, Halo PSA, ideally. You don't have to. I'll be showing it to you if you don't. Any kind of Notepad++ or anything to take notes in, obviously. And again, there is additional API help. Again, I will show you from the N-Central side and from the Halo side. From the Halo side, go to your FQDN of your Halo PSA. So mine is enable without the dash .halopsa.com/API-doc/info, and that will tell you more about the APIs on the Halo side. Okay, now we're going to get into just a couple more slides. We're going to talk about high level why. Why do we do a PSA integration? Why is it so important? Obviously, number one is that N-Central is in the now around what is going on with your customers' devices, okay? And other things as well. The important part here is that when there are problems, we want to be able to notify or alert and notify and create tickets. This allows you to reconcile devices and tickets and alerts and billing all throughout that life cycle that you guys are accustomed to using. Of course, this saves you time and, of course, money. Automating your billing, of course, makes it more efficient and speeds up your cash flow. Now, believe it or not, N-Central has a key part in that. So this will also reduce the noise by handling the duplicates or recurring issues as well. So if you were to do an email integration, emails fire off an email effectively, that goes over to the PSA. And again, if that issue happens again, emails just kind of happen, willy-nilly. Email is a kind of an old, believe it or not, a lot of MSPs still rely on email notifications, believe it or not. So if you are one, obviously looking at a PSA would be important. This is where we can really fine tune the noise, right? Because now that we have something integrated, I can get something over to Halo and Halo can say, okay, wait, our technicians are working on something. And when they finally close that ticket or put it to a certain status, then we can close it on the N-Central side. Now, what does this particular integration give you? Two important things: device exports. You're going to be able to take the assets that are in N-Central. In Halo, they're called assets. In N-Central, we call them devices. So we reconcile the device to the asset. In other platforms, they're called configurations or configuration items. Okay, so there's a lot of different nomenclature within our space, and if you're new to the MSP space, you'll quickly figure out that we have names for a couple names for a little bit of everything. This is going to allow you to automatically create and maintain device asset info. Again, I put configuration item data because a lot of other systems use that term, based in Halo on what is in N-central. And of course, number one, ticketing. This allows you to create, update, close, and reopen tickets automatically. This is going to allow you to create, update, reopen, I forgot to put reopen, and close tickets automatically, manually, or a mix of both from within N-central. And the mix would be something like, maybe you're just going to create and close. Maybe you don't want to update tickets. Maybe you don't want to reopen tickets. So it really depends on your workflow. Which leads me to, what else can you integrate? Now, the custom PSA integration is the module that we're going to use for the integration with Halo. And this functionality allows you to link N-central to your Halo PSA using a REST API. Well, several APIs, but one primarily is a REST API. You can create tickets in your PSA solution. You're going to directly access tickets from N-central, resolve ticket generation issues through auditing and logging. Okay, now available directly through the UI. It's like what we call debug mode. Mark N-central tickets as resolved through externally invoked calls from the PSA. Okay, so if you close something on one side, you close it on the other. Set up the integration on the system or the service level. Now, I don't normally recommend doing system level PSA integrations. You can if you have multiple SOs. However, I still recommend doing a service organization level, but you can also do a hybrid of service organization and customer. So there's several ways to kind of put this together, and we'll go through that. Now, one last slide. Improve your MSP IT service maturity level, or what most people call our operational maturity model, right? And the reason why that every MSP has a PSA, or not all have PSAs, but a lot of them are using at least an IT service management solution, right? A lot of partners are using things like ServiceNow, Freshdesk. I've done integrations with Salesforce, plenty of other ones, all right? The good news here is that what improves how you operate, all right? Now, if you, and I want you to do this exercise with me, is let me just talk about level 0, chaotic, level 1, reactive, level 2, proactive, level 3, IT service provider. I know we're all kind of number 3, but you might be some hybrid in between level 0 to level 3, but maybe even level 4. We're hovering in all of these different areas all of the time, right? I had a partner on this morning who literally said level 0 to level 4. It depends on the day, right? So it's one of those things. And so if you had to give yourself a score about based on where you are in this maturity model, what number would you be? 0 being chaotic, 1 being reactive, 2 being proactive, 3 being service oriented, or 4 value or optimize. What number would you be? So if you could just jot that down in the GoToWebinar for me and let me know. Okay, John says 2.5. So somewhere, if we were to draw a Venn diagram, it'd be like a circle in between. Dan says level 1. 2 to 3 touching at 4 at times. 2-ish on a good day. Now, these are kind of echelon mountains that we have to climb, right? Nobody starts at number 4. I don't care who you are. I don't care how good you know this space. You do not start an MSP business at level 4. This is a continuous improvement model, all right? So as you can see, you leverage tools at 0. Most leverage something like remote control. You might have an RMM. That's when you start getting into between a level 1, level 2, right? You start getting, RMMs, and then you get into PSAs, and then you start developing your vendors and your products, and you try to, you know, shore up the amount of vendors you're doing business with so that your support is repeatable and what have you. So again, you're somewhere between 0 to 3. And then obviously getting to number 4 would be ideal. Now that's it for the high level stuff. We're going to do some cool stuff here now. Okay, so let's get started with Halo PSA. Now, what I'm going to do is some high level slides on what the integration is, and then we're going to kind of just demonstrate it, okay, live. Okay, so let's turn on the N-central integration. So in Halo, there is an integrator. Okay, so you're going to come into configuration at the bottom. That's going to open up a second left-hand navigation window. So you got left-hand 1 and left-hand 2. And then under integrations, you're going to see where you can select enable. Now, when I did this the first time, I thought I clicked and nothing really happened. You actually have to click a little checkbox to be able to turn that on. But once you do, it's going to then take you through into the integrator where you can set up the integration account. So you can see configuration, integrations, enable N-central account. And then from there, I called it Jason Halo. You can give it whatever name you want. You're going to give it then the URL of your N-central server, and then you're going to create an API user from the N-central side. Now this is important. This isn't just any account, and we're going to go through this piece in a little bit. Now, once you have set that up and saved it, you're going to have a test configuration where you will see that it is successful. Okay, let's just demo that portion to get that out of the way really quick. And of course, I closed all of I had to close my browser earlier, so I apologize. I have to reopen this. Open my server as well. Let me just grab my 2FA code. That's what a lot of my colleagues do, but I'm still using mine on my phone. I feel like that's an added level of security for whatever reason. Let's go down to Halo PSA, and I'll come back to here because what we're going to do is scroll all the way down to the bottom where it says configuration. We're going to click into and go down all the way to the bottom in left-hand 2, and we're going to click on integrations, and that's going to open up some other stuff. But here we have the enable and central, right? So this is where we're going to click, turn it on, right? So right now I can turn it off by hitting the X. I'm not going to do that. Just make sure that it is turned red when you're not hovering over it. I don't know why I didn't get that the first time, but I didn't. Okay, so what you're going to do is set up your N-central account. Okay, now in terms of field matching, I have used serial number. If anyone else is recommending something else, please say so in the GoToWebinar. I thought serial number was the best way to do this, but it may not be. You might have a better version or method that you're going to use, like asset tag or something like that. So I just chose serial. And then what I'm going to do is click into N-central accounts where I'm going to build the integration. As you can see, I'm already pre-built. If I wanted to do a new integration, I could definitely do that. Not going to do that today, but I'm going to click through and show you what I've done. So again, I'm going to edit this. I've given it a name, Jason Halo. I've taken my N-central FQDN, so nerdstraining.n-people.com. I've now put this into the URL, given a username and password. Now, that username and password comes from here. Now, the important part of this is that this is no ordinary account. Andy has a question. We were told by another MSP that using serial number causes major issues when multiple devices have the same name. Well, not just serial number, but specifying any matching. Good to know. Okay, well, I'll keep that in mind. Again, mine's more lab driven, so I'm talking about this at a theoretical level. If you were told by another MSP that doing any matching might not be a good thing, I wonder if I can just simply go back and turn it off. I believe you need to match something though. Automatically close tickets that are marked as read. If no, that's nothing. You do, the default was serial. So I don't know if you can choose nothing or not. I believe you have to choose something, Andy. So you can leave blank. Let's try it. Woohoo, you can. Awesome. We use serial and haven't had any issues in over 2 years. Okay, cool. That's what David has said. All right, good. So as a best practice, what I'm getting in terms of feedback is do not use any asset matching fields. I appreciate that. Thank you for keeping me on the rails. Again, I developed this particular integration probably around, I would say about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And, you know, I've talked to a few people at Halo. I've talked to a few partners. I have a partner out of Belgium that I usually work with on this. His name's Robbie. So he didn't indicate anything around, you know, not matching this. So I appreciate you guys, you know, keep me on the rails on this one. All right. So next thing, what we're going to do here is come back to my slides because we've now done this oh, actually, I'm not. I want to do this piece. Is that this is not any kind of username and password account, right? What we're doing is we're creating an API account. Now I've called mine J Murphy plus Halo API at n-able.com. So you're going to give it a login name. You're going to give it a password. And then what you're going to do is you're going to come down to roles. Now in mine, I've given it default administrator for everything, access group for everything. And then what I'm going to do is under the user details, user information, I'm going to change that account into an API account. First things first is I'm going to not use two-factor authentication, which is normally checked, but I am going to turn on MFA not required. Then I'm going to come over to API access and choose this, API only user, okay? So that is where, bear with me for 1 second here. Okay, so, and that's where I'm going to save this particular account. Now, after that, I can generate the JSON web token. I'm not going to click that now because I'll break my integration, but that is where you're going to obviously save your JSON web token. But for this, it's got username and then the password. Okay, test, okay. Then what we're going to do is come back to the slides, like I said I was going to, and we're going to talk about customer and sites mapping. Now, when I did my lab, I only created 3 customers and I didn't create any sites. Effectively, what you're going to be able to do is that one-to-one relationship. Now, I worked at an MSP. Finance was the one responsible for naming the customer in the PSA. My tech team was responsible for naming all of our customers in N-Central. So reconciling the two was sometimes challenging because, you know, their legal name isn't always the same as their, you know, given name or technical name or, you know, the actual customer name. So oftentimes there's like a divide, but as long as you can do that matching, it's fairly straightforward stuff, right? Now, as well, you're going to want to map your customer and sites as well. So behind here, why I didn't do the screenshot, I probably should have, is that there's a site section where you can actually map the customer and sites to the customer and sites in N-Central as well, or from Halo sites to N-Central sites. Now, import N-Central devices. Now, these are what I'm going to call configuration items. They're assets in Halo. So in Halo PSA, devices are referred to assets. What we're going to do here is you're going to then do that discovery, and then you're going to click start. What that's going to do is then effectively do an import. Now there is a webhook option, and this is probably the most important part within doing the PSA integration. This is where it starts hooking in the APIs, okay? Now, what you're going to do here is you're going to probably select incident. It did Depends on your workflow. I had a person this morning say, please use alert. I chose to use incident. To me, an incident is something systems based, right? Now, I haven't done ITIL since like ITIL, I'm old. I haven't probably done ITIL since like 2005. But for me, in my head, hooking in systems is like an incident, whereas an alert is something, in my opinion, customer based. Now, I've got this probably all ass backwards, but that's how I kind of envisioned it in my head. It could be just the opposite. In fact, I'll probably Google this after this call just to keep myself on the rails there. Okay, so now in terms of doing the webhook, obviously you're going to go through it, choose your incident or alert, depending on your workflow. In terms of your new alert user, okay, so tickets raised from N-central alerts will be assigned to this user. I just picked on one of my colleagues that was in my system. Obviously, this could be your support team, this could be whatever you'd want. David says, we see that an alert can become an incident, but the RMM sends out alerts for the most part. To me, alerts are like visual. And I've spent 20 years in RMMs and monitoring solutions. So to me, like an alert is like a visual thing. Like a notification is something that gets sent, like an email notification or some kind of delivery API is like the notification. And then obviously ticket being ticket. So anyways, either way, we'll kind of figure that out. It's a 50-50 split right now. Now what you're going to do here is obviously leave that as your custom PSA. You're going to generate tickets through an API. Is there anyone who has an integration through email? I'm just curious if you do. If you do not, that's great. Because then what you're going to do is it's going to produce the base point URL, the ticketing endpoint, the username, and then you're going to generate, based on that username, you're going to generate a password. And then, well, right below that, only because that screenshot was very long, is that you're going to actually get another username and password. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to kind of put this all together as we go through the demo. And then there's miscellaneous settings. In the miscellaneous settings, the port you're going to use is going to be what you're using for N-central in terms of your login. So for example, if you are using the UI separation feature in N-central, you can effectively put N-central, the UI of N-central, on any port you want. A lot of people do that for security because then it's not running over 443. You may have to use a VPN or some other technology or access it locally or what have you to be able to get into the UI of N-central. So a lot of people use like port 8443, for example. So then you would change that. Require agent username and password for remote access, left that blank. Deactivate clients in Halo when they are deleted from N-central. I've left that blank. I would never delete clients from Halo or from a PSA. Oh, heck no. My opinion, that shouldn't even be an option. You do not want to delete, a customer and their information and all of the invoices and everything that else that falls under the customer. Deactivate assets in Halo when they are deleted from N-central. I'll leave that one up to you. I personally would not do that one either. And automatically create a Halo PSA site directly linked to the N-central client. And that's based on the Halo integrator only. Now, in the custom PSA integration, in fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to fix my slide because I want to break this up a little bit. So I've done this. I want to move this up right there. Okay, I did that the last time and it kind of threw me off. So let's now go over to Halo and get that part straightforward. So what we're going to do here is we've done this. We're going to go to customers. Now that I've synced my customers from N-central over here, you can see the Halo customer and then the N-central customer. Pardon me. I talk pretty much all day long, so at some point my voice tends to get a little raspy. So Halo customer and N-central customer, and again, you can edit that. You can come in, delete, resync all of it. Add another customer. So if I want to do Tony's Tire Emporium, I could link it to a whole other customer in my N-Central. So it's just a one-to-one matching exercise. But same thing with the Halo customer slash site. So again, you'll get produced I don't have sites set up, so all of it's much the same, but you should see here where it is not set, right? So Halo site is just like this. Okay, so it should be like that. Now, I've gone ahead and just done a one-to-one mapping for everything, but that's entirely up to you. Oh, Rob says, will we be able to add clients using the integration? As an example, we onboard a new client and go into the mapping. Can we tell Enable to create the new client, or will those still need to be added manually? Guessing likely this is a feature request. Well, I wouldn't call this one a feature request. I'm doing this bootcamp for a reason. You know, and Halo has really kind of built the integration based on what they can do today. What I want to do is develop this integration into something much, much, much more useful for you. So this is starting point A. There will definitely be a Halo bootcamp, I would say, in, let's say, 4 to 6 months. The reason being is Halo has done everything they can based on our N-Central APIs. Now, what you're probably not aware of is that we have an API project going in right now. You're probably not even aware. If you're running N-Central 23.6, we actually have an API framework that we have just built in. You can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't look at it. It's all behind the scenes, but that framework has been something that we have been developing for the last, I would say, few months. It's done in 23.6. Now what we need to do is start mapping the APIs so that vendors like Halo can do things like what you're describing. In N-Central, you can programmatically pull. You cannot create. You can't create sites in N-Central. There's no API for it, right? So programmatically, you're not going to be able to create a bunch of sites, right? So that's one thing that you're not going to be able to do. There's no API to create the site. We have to build that API. The thing about N-Central, at least today, is that we have been very guarded with management APIs, right? APIs that effectively tell N-Central what to do, right? Tons of systems have these APIs now, and Central has never really gone that far, or Enable has not really gone that far to be able to create a lot of management APIs. That is where we're going next. In fact, in December, or what should be N-Central 23.9, the very first API, REST API, will be developed. That is going to be called it's going to be a REST API called Run Script Automation. So effectively, programmatically, even from Halo or another system like Roost or PIA, or there's another one called ImiBot. That one's not as popular, but that's where you can even command automation from other tool sets, right? So we get these asks all the time, and it's not because vendors want to do business with us. They really want to do business with you so they can really control the automation and also help you learn the ROI on your automation. So that is the kind of stuff that we're developing. So it's not because Halo has missed something. Was that David, or I think that was Rob. So it is what it is today, but those are the things I want your feedback on. What is missing from this integration? What could be improved? Yes, I would agree. If I create a Halo site in Halo, well, man, create it in N-Central, or vice versa, right? Have that bi-directional thing, right? Or maybe the workflow will just be, hey, I'm going to create something in Halo and then automatically create the customer. So it's one of those things where chicken or egg, but we'll figure that part out. David says, we have an issue when a customer has multiple sites. It does not map the main Enable site assets. So what you're saying is if you had Julie Engineering and a bunch of sites, it doesn't map the main customer site, is that correct? Because it's using sites effectively to break away from that. And in Central, effectively, it does much of the same thing. Yeah, we had to create another main site and enable. Really, that's odd because I don't have any sites here, but let me go up to my top one. So when I onboard devices in Central, and let me go into Celtic, you will see here, I've hidden it, but if I go into Asian version, site, integration, and in Central, everything has a site except, as you can see, a couple of these devices, right? They've been onboarded directly into the customer, right? But Leeds, Boston, the other devices in here are all sitting. So I completely understand what you're talking about. Hold on, let me just move this over. That's a big one. Another question from Natalie. Before moving to Halo PSA, we use a system called Autotask, very familiar. The PSA integration, there's a thing about GoToWebinar. If somebody asks another question, it bumps the other question right out of my view. So give me 1 second here. Let's go back to Natalie. The PSA integration ticket template on N-Central for Autotask allows you to map quite a few fields to populate when a ticket is logged. The PSA integration ticket template for Halo only has an option to set the priority on the ticket. Are there plans to have more fields added on the ticket template, like category, for example? 100%. So here, let me show you. So let me go. I don't have an Autotask integration set up, but a lot of the time the current ConnectWise and Autotask integration is nearly identical. So when you come in here, I built my integration at the top level. Now, what that does is exposes all of this at the SO level. And I can do all that mapping. I can create all my ticket recipients. I can do the billing profiles here. I can do export devices. This is a really deep integration with both ConnectWise and Autotask. So it's been around for 10 years, right? So we've been able to develop that. Now, what you can also do, for example, if you don't want to do ticketing at the SO and you have very specific needs around service boards, for example, there's in ConnectWise, for example, there's in Autotask it was called queues, but in ConnectWise is called service boards. Sometimes you need this granularity because you might have a professional services team, or you might have a different branch, field services or L1s, L2s, L3s, whatever it might be. You can carve up your service delivery any which way you want. Most MSPs work within, I would say, 1 to 2 service boards, but this is where you can use this. And if I was to come down to, this is why I said do not map here, customer level. That's why I go down to the customer and I can do, where are we here? Where's Celtic? I lost it. I can go to Celtic and then build my ticketing integration right here, right? As long as I've mapped the customer, those are the two things you get at the customer level, the mapping. So I will map this. Again, if something is disabled at the company, it doesn't work. You're not going to get an integration. If it's done, then you move into ticketing, and this is where you can create your, I would call this something like customer, so Celtic, and then I would call this P1, servers down, and then I would go through and map the service board. Again, this is important because you might have an infrastructure team versus your L1 team or your help desk team or what have you. So there's granularity here. So Natalie, I know exactly what you're talking about. The integration for custom PSA doesn't afford you that granularity. But there might be something we can do. So let me explain as we go through, okay? Craig, we have the same problem. I think it's a Halo issue, not an N-Central. But when Halo uses sites, everything has to be in a site in enable. Halo basically ignores the parent site. We had to create sites for all of our customers to make it work. I will tell you though, in most cases, now this is my colleagues, OU, and I don't typically use sites. I try to avoid sites where I can. And you might say, why would you avoid sites? Only because I used to work for a very large MSP. I'm talking like 30 plus 1,000 devices. When you use sites, it used to I noticed over time it was starting to bog down my N-central server. So I try not to use sites. The only time I use sites is if I have a very big customer and I have to break out geography, like West Coast, East Coast, Ottawa, Leeds, that kind of thing. So I would do it in some situations, but in many others, I would simply try to do everything under the customer. Now, that being said, if I am using sites, I'm going to put everything into a site. I no longer use company corp as a repository for anything. They go into head office, they go into Ottawa office, they go into Raleigh office, they go into Lanark office, whatever office it might be. So if you're going to use that, I would actually recommend that if you're going to use sites, that you use the sites and not the default company corp. Hopefully that makes sense. So I wouldn't say this is an onboarding issue. I wouldn't call it a Halo issue or an N-central issue. It's basically how Halo is architected. You basically have to accommodate for that. So, but I get it. In other PSAs, if you add something to the customer, it'll just add it to the customer in the PSA. So I completely understand. Obviously in Halo, that's not going to work. Coming back here, what we're going to do is go into the asset imports. Now, this is something that I did wrong in my integration initially. And this is something that if you're not using Halo today, and you might be using it in the future, that you want to pay attention to. Because N-central has a device class and device types, right? The device class is something like servers-Windows, laptops-Windows, workstations-Windows. In Halo, we have a bundle for laptops and workstations. So what happens is if I have a workstation and a laptop, you would think it would go into this. Well, it does not, okay? So what you have to do first is this. I just learned this Friday. So I wasn't gonna rebuild my entire integration over it, but just know if you go into, where are you, assets, you're somewhere in here. You have your default asset group types, right? Now, in N-central, you can even do custom device classes, right? So you can really kind of make that a one-to-one if you want. Now I'm going to click on asset by group type, and you're going to see where I don't have any of my assets that I've imported. I haven't gotten that part yet, but you're not seeing it here. But if I was to do that import, you should be seeing them here. You're not, because they've actually fallen down into here, okay? And the reason being is these are workstation-Windows, not just laptops, right? So it's a different integration. So you actually have to go through and create, I believe it's called an asset type. And I don't know here, I believe it's here, new asset. No, this is a new asset, okay. There is a type you can do. It's too late for me to do this now, but this is where you would create effectively the asset type, like laptops-Windows, workstations-Windows, servers-Windows stuff. Then you can do that kind of a relational one-to-one mapping. Okay, so I just want to kind of point that out. And let me come back. Assets, okay, again, I'm using the N-central field long name and the Halo PSA field called name. So that's the relationship one-to-one. And again, you can do other ones as well. If I edit, okay, so if I come in here, I can change that if I wanted to. And again, attempt to match user based on last logged in user. The last logged in user provided by N-central will be compared to the same account name of your Halo user. And then it says, do not import probes. I've actually deselected that because I want to actually import probes. Okay, so I've saved that. And then what I'm going to do is import assets. You can see those 3 laptops, or I should say workstations, that I had imported earlier. If I want to start, you're going to see done, done, done. It now reconciles those within the system based on the metadata tag of the ID, and then stores that data within the asset field or bucket within Halo. In terms of syncing, the Halo integrator can be used to import customers, sites, and assets. I'll edit here. I have chosen to do all three. I would love to know, for those who are using Halo, are you using all three? Like, this is my lab, so again, I don't care. But it might be a situation where you're only going to sync the customer and sites, because this is where you may not want to sync assets automatically. You may want to do some of that manually, or at least on a schedule, on your schedule, or what have you. So is there anyone? Oh, you do use all three. Okay, good. So let's move on to webhooks. This is where the APIs start mapping together. I'm going to edit this really quickly. Now, N-central alerts can be turned into tickets in Halo through the Halo PSA API or email. Now, I'm doing, obviously, API. So what we're going to do here is choose that type. Okay, I've chosen incidents. You can choose alerts. The new alert user, tickets raised from N-central alerts will be assigned to this user. Again, you can choose whoever you want. You can choose your main help desk or what have you. I'm not going to choose Ken, but I'll choose Adrian. And then you've got your custom PSA solution. You're going to generate tickets through an API. Obviously, I've already saved this, so it's already pre-done. I asked earlier if anyone was using email integration. Hopefully not. APIs are a little more dynamic. So it will create your base point URL /API. This is actually enable-halopsa.com/API. So that's the actual URL. And then it's going to create the appended API ticketing endpoint, which is notify/N-central. So it's actually the entirety is enable.halopsa.com/API/notify/N-central. What that really is a RESTful API endpoint where Halo is smart enough to ingest the API communication from N-central, so it allows it in, stores it, and then is able to create, based on the JSON metadata tags and everything else, is able to create the ticketing information. Okay. Then you're going to see username that's pre-generated by the system, and then you're going to generate a password, which is a password you're going to then bring over to N-central in a moment. So jot all of this down, take a screenshot. When a ticket that was created in N-central by an alert is closed, reopened in Halo PSA, it can also be closed, reopened in N-central. So this is where we do that communication from Halo back to N-central. So you need this, right? In my system, it was custom PSA /250, and then that particular password that I gave it. That's exactly what you're going to do. Screenshot everything in here. And then what we're going to do is come over to the custom PSA integration. Now, to walk through that really quickly, you go into N-central administration in the left-hand navigation window. And then what you're going to do is open up the PSA integration. You're going to choose your PSA solution as custom PSA. And then what you're going to do is, here is at the very bottom of Halo, that custom PSA 205. You're going to write that password and obviously provide it over to Halo. And then here is the API ticket generation. So the full URL is enable.halopsa.com/API. That's the entirety. And then the ticketing endpoint, which is notify/N-central. This is where everything kind of gets stored. And then you provide that username and password based on the password generation from the Halo side. This is effectively the mapping that you're going to go through to kind of get them to handshake. Now, clean up pending tickets. Enable N-central will clean up tickets that haven't been confirmed by the PSA for a certain amount of time. Now, in my lab, I've chosen 12 hours. You could put 24 or 36. You can leave them pending as long as you want. These tickets are displayed as pending in N-central. When a pending ticket is deleted, An email will be sent to the email address specified in the ticketing errors section, which is down here, okay? So this is where if there is any API errors, and sometimes there is, you want to at least get notified if there is a problem. This is where Halo PSA has turned on the settings. And again, the debug logging. Now, this is great if you want to troubleshoot APIs or API communication, or if you want to see what the payload of an API really looks like. This is the metadata that we're actually sending Halo, right? This entirety this is what an API query looks like, right? This is actually a post action, not really a query, but we're posting metadata out into the universe. And then we're creating all of the information necessary for Halo to decipher it and go, oh, I know what you mean. You want me to create a ticket based on this alert, based on this device, et cetera, et cetera. And then at the bottom here, you're going to see where it has an external ticket ID 2212 and ticket URL, enable halopsa.com/ticket?ID equals 2212. Now, based on this, it gives me the URL directly to the ticket and also gives me the ticket number. Those are the two things that get put back to N-Central, the put action. Okay. Now, there's also the ticketing recipient. Now, I believe it was Natalie was talking about, let me just go back to her. Okay, so a few things here, and I want to go through this because I want to see if I got this right based on what Natalie has described. But basically in here, what we can do is handle repeat failures, right? We can't handle statuses currently, right? Because the status is really pulled from Halo. And this integration has been done by Halo. So I'm not pulling anything from Halo to kind of be able to do a representation or a mapping from that side, like I can with ConnectWise or Autotask. So that's really what Natalie was talking about. But it's one of those things what we're obviously looking to develop a much closer and tighter integration as we move forward. Okay, so let's go over to the N-Central side. And if I come into let's go back to the top. Halo. Okay, so if I come in here and I go into configure PSA integration, same as before, I take that input, generate tickets through an API. You can choose ticket. I'm not going to click it because I'd break my integration, but this is where you input all of that information as we described in the slides. Then what we're going to do is go into debug logging. As you can see, if you want to expose any of the tickets that have been generated, they do get logged. And again, if you're seeing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tickets, you may want to use, logs since the last hour, right? Not that I've generated any over the last hour, but this is all from yesterday, I believe. Again, you can do tail logs as well. But this is where you can see exactly what is being sent over. Now, the reason for this is that you may want to actually do other things with the tickets. Now, I don't know enough about Halo's PSA to be able to talk to it, but oftentimes you can include additional fields within the ticketing. That is exactly what this does. This is called custom tags. So for example, in ServiceNow, it's called assignment groups. And I'll put, what do I want to put? I'll put network engineers, something like that. I can add, maybe I want to put priority. And I'll put level 1. Maybe I'm trying to kind of talk through what Natalie was really describing. In this integration, you're going to be able to add in custom tags. The problem is that I haven't figured out a way to be able to incorporate scripting to be able to include that into, come back, click in here so that I can append additional information into the issue. That is exactly what this is meant to do. All right, so you've got custom tags. I just don't know what is possible through Halo PSA yet. Again, this is the stuff that I want to develop and work through. So I can teach you guys some of the finer points of being able to do things with tickets from a scripted point of view, or if I can supply you some scripting or what have you. I'm just not there yet. But again, I'll probably do this boot camp again, I would say by anywhere from March to June next year. And then hopefully I'll have all of the information to be able to make this a really tight integration. Now, next thing here, let me just I'll call this P1 server is down. And then I'm going to call this, priority. I'll put this level 1. I'll add in issue type, server, and then here, I'll just do another one. And I think it's sub issue type connectivity, something like that. Anyways, like I was saying, you can do much of what Natalie was describing. I just don't know how to do that in Halo just yet. So this will actually append based on this when I do this. I'll get to the actual mapping here in a moment. But do I want to reopen any tickets that have, maybe it's gone down again over a 24-hour period? Do I want to create a new ticket at hour 25, or is it 72 hours? Those kinds of things. 72 hours. I think 3 days is usually sufficient. Again, include all of the information within a Windows event log, and this is where you do your mapping. So if I had server is down, I don't, but I know that if I have agent and probe failure on my server, it's going to then generate alert. I would probably call the server is down. That's a whole other boot camp, by the way. And again, 24/7. Now, the important part here is I do a one-to-one relationship, right? So you can see that I took one single notification profile, agent and probe failure, and mapped it to this ticketing recipient. If I want to do another P1, so what would be another P1? I'll just do a P2. So if I do a P2 workstation disk is full, something like that. Oop, I can't spell, but you get the picture. And then again, same thing as before, priority level 2, issue type. I think I called it issue before, but you get it. Issue is disk, sub issue type, filled, whatever. I probably wouldn't use that in real life, but we'll just use that as an example. Again, same as before, 72 hours or 72 hours. And then I would map this to something like workstation hardware. There, oop, there, and then save. So you can kind of do what Natalie is describing. I'll be honest with you, I don't know how to do that just yet. Craig, we have the same problem. I think it's I've already answered this, I'm sorry. There's actually stuff below it. John, if you right click on the list of asset types. Okay, I've answered all the questions, I'm sorry. I would scroll up to the top forever. The scrolling in the chat feature within GoToWebinar or questions feature within GoToWebinar isn't very intuitive. Okay, so let me come back here. And I do want to also talk about the notification templates. Now, you will see one important distinction as a default in N-central. And this one is important. The reason being is that if I come into Halo PSA and I go into, where are we? Administration defaults and then notification templates. I have customized my PSA integration template. I've added some markdown language. I haven't figured out how Halo PSA can accept markdown, so it can't bold or highlight or whatever. You know, I can use markdown HTML a little bit, but it's one of those things where it's not able to accept everything's in plain text. So I want to fix that portion as well. But long story short, there are all these variables. This is all of the information that you could capture in a ticket and are not. You want to know why? Because if I come down to here and I show you the PSA integration template, this is effectively what I call the API template, okay? This API integration template is in super basic mode, right? It does an adequate job. It tells you a little bit about what's going on, but doesn't do exactly what you want from it. So I would highly recommend, I can send you my example if you want to send me an email. Here, I'll give you my email just in case you want to talk to me about Halo or ask me any questions or what have you, Jason Murphy at n-able.com. There we go. So go ahead and ask me any questions around that or enhancements or give me any feedback, or if you, by the way, I will be talking to Halo and setting up requirements for our PM team. I don't actually write the requirements. I kind of jot down all of the important things and kind of hand it on over to them, and they can kind of figure that part out. But it's one of those things where this is super basic. So please look to some of this and go, okay, well, the task ID, yeah, what is that? We'll generate some tickets, get an idea, timestamps. Like say you're in Europe and you have, and this happens, is that if you're an MSP in the UK, you might have customers in Germany, you might have customers, you know, in Ireland. Time zones is really important. So understanding and acknowledgement time and the time zone is hugely, hugely important, okay? So ticket numbers, all of it, right? So here's time of notification, time of state of change, all important stuff. And we're not doing any of that in here, okay? So I actually have three different examples saved. I have one that I used when I was at an MSP that I built, but I'll give you that one and you can kind of roll with it. But just remember, you can customize your notifications, the information you're gathering from N-Central and putting it into a ticket at the, literally at your fingertips, okay? So it's all here. Cool. Now, any questions on this? John's just asking me, all very helpful stuff. Will there be a recording? There will be. I will probably have it posted to the, I keep calling it the MSP Institute, Enable You. So if you go to me.n-able.com and click on learning at the top, you're going to see where it says Enable You. That was the MSP Institute. We use a educational platform that we house all of our videos and everything in. So you have to click through there and authenticate. And then what you can do is search for Halo or any of my other boot camps. I do a ServiceNow, it's called custom PSA, but it's actually a ServiceNow integration. So that's why I wanted to do another one specifically for Halo. Now, before we end, I want to ask you a quick question around this, is that we have a brand new product that is set to come out very shortly. Well, what this is going to allow you to do is effectively bringing in all of your cloud management under one hood. Okay, so whether you're using Microsoft 365, which my guess all of you are, there might be one person who's using G Suite, but it's very rare. You've got IaaS and PaaS management through Microsoft Azure, Intune. You've got customers that are using Intune or might be using Intune or Azure AD. And this is going to give you the cost monitoring and optimization. Anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but this is where you're going to get the complete visibility that you need from the Microsoft ecosystem. So we're bringing a lot of ease of use down to the MSP partners so that they can manage and monitor and do all of the things that they really, really want to do within the Microsoft ecosystem. You can actually email valerie.mcandrew@n-able.com. So if you want to just take a screenshot of that or just type her name and do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up to the floor and say Q&A. Ask me anything. It can be around Cloud Commander. It can be around N-central. It can be around Halo PSA. And again, I capture all of these questions and it does go over to, her name's Sarah, where we can actually respond to it and everything else. Okay, so is it possible to exclude Windows probes from device sync to Halo? Absolutely, Dan. So it was, let me go to, can I ask you a question though? Can you tell me why you would want to exclude Windows probes from the device sync in Halo? That's the part I want to know, because I actually turned it off. So let me find my browser here. So if I go to Halo, into assets, and you scroll down here, it says, do not import probes, right? So you can check that box and it won't import the probe. I would assume that you probably want to import it, but then not sync it. I'm assuming that if you come back, you can actually deselect it and do it that way. I'm gonna say Gia, hopefully I got that right. If a new site is created in N-central, how can that be linked in Halo? You would have to, I believe what you have to do as an onboarding step is come in and resync it. Okay, so you have to come into that customers and you're going to go into your integration like I am right now, right? And then you're going to click add. You're going to take your brand new customer called Acorn and map it to your Acorn in N-central. Okay. Thank you, David, I appreciate it. John, when syncing devices, you mentioned that most use serial numbers. Do all devices have serial numbers? Where does the asset tag come from? Is that created and assigned to every device by N-central? That's a great question. So device reconciliation is actually really, really hard, believe it or not, at least based on how we do it today. And I can't really show it to you. Well, I can. Let me show you what a device actually is in N-central. So if I hover here, you're going to see in Chrome, you've probably noticed it a few times if you hover on hyperlinks, at least in N-central, it exposes right above my start menu bar, it exposes a URL. You can see that it says nerdstraining.n-able.com/edit LAN device action.action ? Device ID. So we use a device ID. You can't get device ID anywhere in N-central in the UI. The only way to do that is really to kind of hover, or through an API, ask N-central, what are my devices? Give me a list. And then you're going to get a name and a device ID. And it was based on, that's a whole other bootcamp. I do an API bootcamp specifically on teaching partners how to use N-central APIs. Anyways, long story short, if I come into the device, we have a device ID, but there is also, come in, is it local agent? There. There is also an appliance ID, right? So there's a couple pieces of metadata tags that we use to do device reconciliation. Now, the problem is that what happens is that if the agent, so the device sticks around in N-central, but then we create effectively the same device. So you can get into duplicate devices in N-central. It's not as common as it used to be. You shouldn't see duplicate devices in N-central, but it used to happen, I wouldn't say quite a bit, but it used to happen a lot more frequently than it does now. But in terms of asset, if you go into, where is it? That's the discovery tag, serial number. Now these are virtual machines, so we do like an assignment. I mean, Windows does an assignment of a serial for a virtual device. Most Windows, Mac, and Linux devices all have serials, okay? When it gets into other devices, let me go into a firewall. I'd have to go back up to my enable. I'll go into like a Palo Alto, or let's go into this Sonic wall. If I go to the asset, you got it, serial, right? Now, that's why most devices have some kind of serial number, right? As opposed to an asset tag, which is really, asset tag is really kind of a Dell specific term. No one uses typical asset tags, although we will take a serial from HP and put it as an asset tag. Anyways, Dan, management doesn't want to see them. They get confused thinking it's duplicate assets. What was the original question, Dan? I'm sorry. Is it possible to exclude Windows probes from device sync in Halo? I see, okay. Management doesn't want to see them. They get confused thinking it's duplicate assets. Okay, so yeah, in that case, I would say do not choose the probe, right? Like I showed you. Can we import warranty dates? I should probably know this. Give me 1 sec. Let me go up to assets. Serial. I would say programmatically, we could. Are we right now? Probably not. This is the kind of stuff, the reason being is like the API integration is really meant to take the device info, like device name or whatever. We're supposed to jam that into the ticket so you know what device in what ticket, right? That's the problem with creating the ticket on it, that kind of thing. Now you want additional information. You probably want ticket histories or the software that's installed on that device, or just general information so that you understand, am I dealing with a new device, an old device, those kinds of things. That's where we're going to have to develop that, David. But can you import warranty dates? Yeah, I actually can. That's all available in N-central today. All you need to do is programmatically go into Halo and take that data from N-central and massage it into the right areas within Halo. Can I do that today? Probably not. I need to know a little bit more, but those are the things that we want to do for sure. Could we use asset tag then to sync? I would say you could, but test, right? I would do an integration and test to see if it matches what you think is going to do. I have only done serial, right? So, and other people were saying do not sync at all. So they're not using any, okay? Oh, I said asset tag, but I meant device ID. I do not think that's like a buried API device ID. So if I went back into my Halo, where are you, Halo, and I went into, I don't even know if that's even in the, that's the ticket ID, not the device ID. That's the kind of stuff that we should be exposing within like the API metadata, so Halo can grab that information and go, oh, hey, this device, right? We're not doing that today. Now, you can actually pull that information from N-central. So I show partners how to do that all the time. There's actually, if you want to go to the MSP Institute or Enable You, check out my N-central API bootcamp. I show people how to do that. That's almost example 1 or 2. John, I think it would be better method to sync instead of serial number. Probably right, because it's an enable specific, right, ID. Now, again, very rarely will we get duplicates, but it does happen. So anyways, that's it for the questions. I'm going to leave it open for another 2 minutes. If you have any other questions, please go ahead and ask them. Otherwise, again, like I said earlier, thank you so much, and I will see you on the next bootcamp. And thank you, John. Appreciate it. Oh, there's a question from another John. Okay, 1 second. What I really want to see in the integration is native mapping of asset service fields without having to use custom integrations for Halo PSA. 100%. This is all going to be templated at some point, John. That's right now, like I said earlier in the boot camp, Halo has gone ahead and done what they can in terms of integrations. So I'm going to work with them on what they want and what we want. I know what you want, only because I've been handling PSA integrations for a long time. Let's just put it that way. I've gotten the common request. I want to be able to hook into custom fields in Central and map them to custom fields in absolutely 100%. So I completely understand. But you want additional details for monitored service, right back between Halo PSA and Central for customers, sites, and assets. What do you mean by right back? Maybe I'm not getting the context. So having to use custom integrations, Halo PSA, additional details for monitored services, right back between Halo PSA and Central for customers, sites, and assets. I'd have to know more about kind of like the use case you're talking about in terms of the right back. Obviously, you're talking about if something happens in Halo, obviously, get that on over to Central, and if something happens in Central, get that on over to the PSA. Okay. Like you mentioned earlier, if we create a customer in Halo, okay, yeah, absolutely. So I would say by early Q1, here, let me show you a slide. I got slides everywhere, man. This is so I just got back from a trip across Canada. I did all the Canadian ones, which is fun, which was fun for me because I never travel in Canada. I travel all over the States. But here we go. This is what we're going to do in the short term, okay? This is going to be in 23.9, okay? So run script automation. Again, all those third parties are going to be able to use, or you're going to be able to tell Central through a script or what have you, hey, I want to run a script. I know it sounds, you're going to have a script run a script, but you can't do that. The next one is going to be add, modify, delete devices from Central. Can't do that today. Create, modify, delete customer site. So again, can't do that today, but you could tomorrow. So once we open up these APIs to Halo, we're like, oh, hey, instead of just syncing manually, if I have a brand new site in Halo, I could then even also create that site in Central as well. Create, modify, delete users. So this is an important one. And then this, so obviously I'm doing a boot camp for a reason. So that is what a lot of this PSA to be announced is going to be about. And I can't really talk about it too much because we're a publicly traded company and we can only do things in quarters and everything else. And again, I'm not the executive vice president of our team, so anything can happen. But we do have a lot of big plans around enhancing our PSA integrations. Okay. Otherwise, if you do not have any questions, I just want to say thank you for attending my boot camp as usual, and look forward to seeing you again on the next boot camp. Okay, thanks so much.